This video is sponsored by Rockform. They make the best phone mount and case combo that I've ever used on a motorcycle, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them later on, as well as a special offer that they're making available through the channel.
Do you struggle with a limp lever? Do you find yourself struggling to stay firm when the going gets tough? It sounds to me like you need a brake bleed, and this is something that you could take your bike to the dealership, spend a whole bunch of money on, or you could save the cash and do it yourself. Thankfully today, I am going to show you how to bleed your brakes and replace your brake pads on your motorcycle. Now, if you're a noob out there and you bought your motorcycle secondhand like we did with our new giveaway bike, the Z900 RS right here, you might notice that your front brake feel, maybe your rear brake feel is a little bit squishy, a little vague, or maybe you have these big Brembo stoppers that don't seem to be doing the job all that well. Don't go get a whole new motorcycle, simply just bleed your brakes. If it seems like a daunting task, it's really not. It's quite simple, and all you need are a few hand tools or a special bleeding kit, which we will show you how to use here in a minute. The only other special things that you are gonna need are a fresh set of brake pads and some brand new fluid. Now, these things are consumable parts and they wear down, but that begs the question, why? Breakdown occurs at your brake pads for obvious reasons. It's basically two pieces of steel with a whole bunch of fancy stuff in between it, squishing a rotor that's spinning really fast. Heat and friction are really rough on anything that's in contact with it. So very clearly, you are going to burn through your brake pads. Average street use, you're probably going to get several thousand to tens of thousands of miles out of your brake pads, depending on how you ride. Though, if you are a track rat, you are going to burn through pads a whole lot faster. It's also worth pointing out that you can probably do 2 sets of fronts for every single brake pad you put in the rear, because rear brakes just don't work nearly as hard. Now, breakdown of the fluid occurs for 3 reasons, a lot of it chemical, so you're gonna have to bear with me here as we get sciencey. First and foremost, it interacts with UV, which we have a giant gas ball shooting UV light at us every single day. So if you store your motorcycle outside, you're going to notice that your fluid wears down a whole lot faster. Secondly, use. As you use your brakes, the whole system heats up. It reaches a boiling point, and that's not good for the fluid. It causes it to age. It can only reach its boiling point and go back down so many times before it starts to age out. And lastly, water. Brake fluid and water simply do not go together well. It's going to cause you to have a whole list of problems, not least of which is a squishy lever. Sometimes you might even get air bubbles in there, in which case you got a big old problem. Now, with the science done, let's talk about how to actually get all of this fluid out and some fresh pads on your bike.
Before you go, let's take a second to talk about maintaining your cell phone. I know you spent a lot of cash on it, or at least your sugar daddy did, and it would be a crying shame if something were to happen to it. Something like, oh, I don't know, you dropping it. Let's be real, we've all cracked a phone screen at some point, and we all know the pit in your stomach when you flip over that phone you just dropped, hoping to Rossi that it's not cracked, only to find it busted like a Harley rider's ego when a Ninja 400 outruns him on the highway. Lucky for you, Rockform has the best phone case out there. Drop tested from 6 feet, and I've personally dropped my phone in it a whole bunch, and it's still kicking. They also make rock solid handlebar mounts, sport rings, screen protectors, and more. Click that link down below and check out everything they have to offer, and use the code YN25 for 25% off your order. Again, that's YN25 for 25% off your whole order.
So when I said you only needed simple hand tools to get this job done, I'm not kidding. All you need are some 8 and 10 mil boxes. It will depend based on what your motorcycle is. If it's a Harley, you're gonna need some standard. If your bike has a bunch of different sizes, you might need to check this. It's really simple. Just put it on the little bleeder nipple. If it fits, you're good. You really should only need 2 of these. You'll need a screwdriver in a lot of cases. You should have one of these lying around between the couch cushions. And then lastly, you're going to need some rubber hose and a cup to catch all of the fluid in. super simple to bleed your brakes. And this is where we get into specialty tools that will make your job easier. This is actually out of our Bike Master brake bleeder kit. We do sell this on the shop. It is a vacuum bleeder, and all you need to do is hook all this stuff up to your brake line, and it will literally pull the bad fluid out, making it a lot faster. Do you need this stuff? No, I'm gonna tell you that right now. You do not need this. However, it makes the job so much faster, and it's actually a lot cleaner to do it that way too, since you're not gonna have fluid dribbling everywhere. So if you would like to get yourself a kit like this, we do sell them on shop.yammynoob.co. You can click that link down in the description below. We also sell all the other tools that you need to get this job done there too, so you can check all that out. Now, let's show you how to prepare the bike to get all this done. Now, before you even lift a tool, guys, it is worth pointing out that brake fluid is nasty stuff. Do not drink it, do not get it in your eyes, and you do not want to get it on your motorcycle. Grab yourself some paper towels and prepare the area around and under this cylinder here. You're gonna thank me later when you don't have to wash your entire motorcycle down after you've done this job, because you're gonna get fluid everywhere. Everybody gets fluid everywhere. I can do this. Now, I did say you did not need a special tool to get this job done, and I wasn't kidding. All you need to do is you need to take this little cover off the nipple here, and then you're going to put this guy right on here. This doesn't need to be a special tube or anything. All you need is just some thin plastic tubing and a cup that it goes into. This came with the kit, but normally I just use a soda bottle and a plastic tube. It's really simple to do this stuff, and again, you don't need to race out and get a whole bunch of fancy stuff just because we're using it here. You're just gonna pop this on there, make sure it's on there good and tight. You crack the valve open, you press your brake lever, and then you close the valve. Then you do that 1,000 times. So as you're pulling out this fluid, you're gonna notice that this is some nasty stuff. This fluid should be clear, not any kind of color to it. It should basically look like ginger ale. Just a little bit of pale yellow to it at the very least. You don't want this color. This color means that it is old fluid. Get unstuck, you bastard. There we go. The next thing that's important to remember is you do not want to pull air into your fluid here. You're going to want to make sure that you add more fluid to your reservoir as you're pulling it out of your motorcycle. You might notice that on your bike it's taking a long time for clean fluid to go in. Chances are you have an ABS motorcycle. Your ABS lines run on your brake fluid, and it goes all the way back into the brain of your motorcycle and then forward. There's a lot of fluid in an ABS line. If you're replacing your fluid, do not use old stuff. You don't want to use anything that's been sitting on the shelf for a year. As long as it's been sealed, it's fine, but if it's not sealed, that fluid's no good anymore. You can use as much of your fluid as you want while you're doing this because you can't save this stuff. Also, if you're worried about what fluid you need, you just simply need to check the cap for your motorcycle. It'll tell you exactly what you need. This says that it wants .4 brake fluid only. It's exactly what we have here. Now, if you're doing this process the old-fashioned way, you're gonna crack, squeeze, hold, close the bolt, and then release a whole bunch of times. You're gonna have to do that over and over and over and over again until you start drawing clean fluid out of your brake system. However, if you have the vacuum bleeder, this is where things speed up a lot. All you need to do is just simply connect it to your line, crack the nut open right there, and then you just start pumping fluid out of the brake line. You're just gonna pull a vacuum through, and it's gonna pull out all that nasty fluid into the cup. Now, once you're starting to see clear fluid come through this hose, that means you are good and done bleeding your brakes. All you gotta do is you need to close this nut. Now, when you do that, do not go full ham on this thing. You want to get it just tight enough and then just a smidge more. If you go super tight on this, you will strip threads and you're gonna have a very bad time. Snug it plus just a touch. That's all it needs. Now I said you were done. Hold your horses there. If you are done on that side and you only have one rotor, then yes, you are in fact complete. However, if you have a second rotor on your motorcycle with a second caliper, you also need to bleed that because it has its own brake line that is filled with nasty fluid. You don't want that nasty fluid interacting with your good stuff. It's gonna prematurely age and your brake calipers will perform differently. Then, once you're done up front, you gotta do it in the back. So, it's time for a montage. On a motorcycle, it's honestly really just zen, you know? Now I got a trick for the rear brake that's gonna make this job a lot easier and you won't see in any of the manuals. All you gotta do is simply remove this bolt, if you can remove your reservoir, and then it's gonna make accessing this so much easier. That way you can simply pour the fluid in with it holding itself upright, and you don't have to worry about getting it all on the back of your motorcycle. There's a tip, pro tip from me to you. Alrighty guys, once you are done bleeding your brakes, it's important that you pump pressure back into your brake system. These things are a hydraulic system after all, and they need pressure to rebuild. However, if you're doing this and you realize, well, I put a whole bunch of new fluid in, and those brakes, they just aren't feeling any better, it's time to get your pads out. So let's pop the calipers off this motorcycle and get these pads replaced. Now, if you've never done brake pads before, it's a very simple procedure. On this motorcycle, it's only 8 bolts, 2 holding the calipers in place and 2 pins holding the pads in place. The first thing you're gonna wanna do is crack the pins holding the pads in place so that you don't have to do it with the caliper in your hand. It's just a lot easier when it's on the bike. So all you do is just crack them loose. Sometimes they go real easy, sometimes they don't. Then you pull the caliper off. Yes! Now I have the caliper here in my hand. There's a couple of things that I want to point out before we go on. Do not squeeze the brake lever with the caliper on here because you're going to compress these pads. Once they're together, good luck separating them. Now, before you take anything else out, it's worth grabbing a big old screwdriver and separating the pads. If you're going to be replacing the pads, just cram the screwdriver in there and separate them. You're not going to hurt anything by doing this. What that's going to do is it's going to make your job a lot easier. It creates a lot more room in there. Once you've got this area prepped, it's time to take the pins out. The pads will slide right out. The pads are now out of this caliper here, but I do want to point out that there is a spring in here. Do not lose that spring. If it slides out, you should put it back in so you don't lose it. I managed to take these out without the spring coming out, so I'm just gonna leave it stuck in there. You need that spring. If it's broken, replace it. If it doesn't feel like it's working, replace it. And make sure before you put the pads in, that spring is in place. There are a whole bunch of styles of brake pads out there, from sintered to semi-sintered to semi-metallic, all kinds of different brake pads. But all you need to know is that you need to have the right pad shape to fit inside your motorcycle. Believe it or not, I actually went to a dealership, gave them the kind of bike we were working on, and they came up with the wrong set of pads. So it's always worth knowing what kind of pads you need to put in your bike. That's going to be in your service manual, or you can call up your local dealership, give them the exact VIN of your motorcycle, and then they'll be able to tell you what kind of parts you need. If you just say, hey, I have a 2019 Z900 RS, they might give you the wrong pads, which blows my mind. But anyway, we have the right pads here, and you can see the difference between the stock pads and the new ones. These actually don't have too much life out of them. They're fairly new, but they are glazed over, and they do have these heat channels in here, which they're not gonna see on these EBC racing pads that I bought. These things are brand new. They are going to feel so sharp. With your new pads in place, the pins in place, you're gonna wanna separate them and then put your caliper back on the rotor, nice and gentle like, and set it up so that you can drop the bolts back in place. All of these have very specific torque numbers. Do not good and tight your brakes. These need to be done to torque. Google it or get yourself a service manual. You'll thank yourself later. And there you have it, replacing your brake pads and brake fluid. It's a really simple job that you should be able to do on any motorcycle. It's gonna save you money. It's going to make you more familiar with your bike. And if you do the job right, you're gonna know that it was done flawlessly, like me. I did it flawlessly. This bike is perfect now. All good. You're welcome. Remember guys, you can get this motorcycle as a giveaway bike by clicking the link down in the description below, going to shop.yammynoob.co and picking up any of the tools that we used in this video. Every dollar you spend is an entry to win this here motorcycle. Or if you want to support the series the old-fashioned way, click that link down below to yammynoob.co, sign yourself up, get yourself a whole bunch of discounts on all things motorcycling. And until next time, I'll catch you guys in the next episode of Yammy Noob.
Keep watching Yammy Noob.